We are, recording's now in progress. And we are hearing about Alex, who is just about to get initiated. And I think this is where we left off last time. If anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, because I highlighted this part. So I'm presuming this is where we left off last week. Yeah, yes. Okay, so let's see who's with us today. You can put your hands up while we're seeing who's with us today. And you can read. Sachari's just shot her hand up there. First, let's offer pranams to Prabhupada. Namo Om Vishnu Vara Krishna Vistaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gaudavani Pachaline Nevasesha Sunyavadi Pushtatadastarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sari Gaudavaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, I think everyone is aware of what we're reading now. It's the unfolding story of a plausible story of someone who goes back to Godhead within our ISKCON society. And we're hearing about his life. Now, just a reminder that you see here, if I scroll down, then I've highlighted in brackets here is the notes that Maharaj makes explaining the sastrically what's going on with this, or what stage in devotion is actually relates to. So that's why that's highlighted there, okay? You see another highlight, for example, here. Yeah. All right, so let's get straight into it, as they say. So, Sachari, would you like to read? And I'll stop scrolling up and down so it doesn't make everyone dizzy.
Okay. So, where are we reading from? Which page, please?
Oh, no, I don't know. It's on the computer here. I'll have to look. Someone has the book there with them?
712. 712.
712?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Alex associated closely with Govinda Maharaj for a year and even traveled with the Maharaj as his servant for 3 months. At the end of this time, Alex's initial impression was solidly confirmed and he asked for and received initiation during the Gaura Purnima festival in Mayapur. Alex's new name was Acyutananda Dasa.
Acyutananda Dasa Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
A little more than a year later, when Govinda Maharaj was visiting the temple, Alex received second initiation, Mantra Diksha, and became a Brahmana. George and his wife Sheila had been initiated a little earlier by Bhakti Prabhava Swami, an Indian sannyasi, well thought of for his discourses on Krishna's pastimes and his sweet singing of Vaishnava songs. Their new names were Gaurahari Dasa and Sheelavati Devi Dasi. Both disciple and spiritual masters should be fit and they should get to know each other by close association. Pushta. Krishna was the natural choice as Diksha Guru for Alex, who had complete faith in him. But etiquette forbade Pushta Krishna from accepting disciples in the physical presence of his Diksha Guru. Alex had faith in the potency of following the regulations of devotional service. So he accepted Govinda Maharaj, a guru for him, embodied commitment to the rules and regulations. Gaurahari, also a strict devotee, found his primary inspiration in Krishna consciousness from the taste he got from preaching and kirtan. He and his wife accepted a guru who, while also strict in devotional practices, confirmed and nurtured the kind of attraction they had in Krishna. Yeah, scroll down.
Yeah. Sorry, this should be, and I should have highlighted this. This is a note of the. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, Krishna consciousness. Yeah. Initiation, especially second initiation, seemed to open up new horizons in Acyutananda Krishna consciousness. He chanted the Gayatri Mantra occasionally, worshipped the temple deities, and felt officially recognized as a member of an illustrious disciplic succession. Younger devotees turned to him for guidance as a senior devotee. He liked being in the position of an advisor, an authority, yet he sometimes felt dissatisfied with the parroted answers he gave to controversial questions. Was the fallen jiva even in the spiritual world? Can a devotee who is not liberated serve as guru? Is there a place for spontaneous devotional service in ISKCON? Acyutananda wrote, Govinda Maharaj spoke to Pushta Krishna and met with the temple president. Their guidance helped. Still, he felt his understanding of the philosophy was piecemeal. One day, Acyutananda was asked to explain the meaning and purpose of Brahma Gayatri. Dissatisfied with the response, he decided to study everything in Srila Prabhupada's books on the subject. While continuing his new service as Sankirtana leader, Acyutananda collected and collated everything Srila Prabhupada had written about all 7 Gayatri mantras. His project completed, he thought, now I'm getting somewhere. And truly he was. He better understood the meanings of the Gayatri mantras and how to chant and contemplate them properly. But his enthusiasm was quickly shattered as he revealed to Gaura Hari, I have been chanting Gayatri for years, but mechanically, not knowing what I was chanting or why. In following the regulative principles of devotional service, inattention, pramada, and lethargy, laya, often causes devotees absorbed in the acts of devotion to lose sight of the goal. To remember Krishna, smartavya satatam Vishnu, in love. For example, chanting the Gayatri mantra can become a mechanical activity rather than an absorption in Guru, Gaura, and Krishna, Smarana. It performed strictly, Vaidhi Bhakti will gradually purify the heart and by good association, allow the devotees to free themselves of such offensive practices. Otherwise, the devotion becomes spoiled.
Okay, perhaps we'll pause there. Any reflections on this or any comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you please say what is piecemeal, Prabhu?
What is what?
Piecemeal.
Piecemeal, it means little bits here and there.
Okay.
Not the complete picture.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
So this is kind of highlighting a natural development. At some point, devotees become a little bit more serious about really understanding the philosophy in earnestly having a good grasp of the Siddhanta. So in other words, he's having to go a bit deeper. He is not satisfied with having a piecemeal understanding of the philosophy. He gives the example of the Gayatri mantra. Yeah, been chanting for many years without really understanding its meaning or meditation fully. Some of us might similar. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember when Sansara Dhavanam plays Guru Ashtakam, we are just saying and saying, my God, when I
Yeah, that's an example. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or the prayers to Tulsi.
Yeah.
And that comes up in this
Okay.
here as well. Yeah. All right. So yeah, so we can go on. If there's any other reflections or comments or questions, perhaps we can have Nitai Mata, you can read from here again.
Thank you, Prabhu.
If anyone does have a question or something needs to be made clear or you'd like to give some reflection, you can just unmute and go ahead.
Sorry, Prabhu. I haven't really joined the Tuesday classes. Which guru is this? You said Govinda Maharaj?
Okay, well, this is, again, was you with us last week, Mother?
No, sorry, I wasn't.
Okay, yeah. Now, Shivaram Swami Maharaj, what he's using, the names he is using does not indicate the actual personalities. It's just, what's the word? I'm trying to look for it. It's just...
alligator?
Yeah, Sorry, say again.
Fictitious character.
Yeah, fictitious characters. These are all fictitious.
Sorry.
Yeah, although there is a Govinda Maharaj and there is also a Prabhav Swami.
Yes.
Now, actually, this was written before there was a Prabhav Swami.
Ah,
Yeah, so these are all fictitious characters. Okay.
right. Yes.
Yeah. Mhm.
Thank you.
No problem.
What you said was this is a devotee going through his spiritual life from first initiation to second.
Yeah.
developing in his spiritual life.
Okay.
Yeah,
Maharaj is
yeah.
giving, like how a devotee is progressing.
So it's a story that we can relate to.
Yes.
So the whole of Sudha Bhakti Chintamani and all the different stages, that will be seen here in this description of Alex, who's now being initiated as Acyutananda. And he
Okay.
joined with two friends, a husband and wife, who also took initiation. Their names, just scrolling down, perhaps, whatever, we'll come across them again.
And I was thinking how now that he's progressing, advancing, he's like having some doubts. He wants to look into it, like this guy, for example.
Yeah.
That he looked up so much information to
Yeah,
set
studying it. Yeah.
So that's how one's like going forward in his devotional life.
Yeah, and Marge says we shouldn't, that there is a goal. So we should keep our eyes set on the goal.
This can relate to any of us then, really.
Sorry?
So this can relate to any devotees really going the spiritual journey.
Yeah. So for example, yeah, exactly. Like Acyutananda felt his chanting was mechanical of the Gayatri. So he because he didn't really know much about it. So he's done his study. So he studied about it now.
That's good.
All right. So you can continue Nima Mata here. Oda Hari.
Gaurahari gave his friend an impish smile and said, "And how consciously have we been performing any devotional activity?" Achutananda was.
Startled.
One second, Prabhu. Sorry. Can you little come up, Prabhu? Sorry, my. Do you want to come up, Prabhu?
Oh, sorry, you can't see, no? Okay. So.
Achyutananda was startled. Gaurahari's answer was a challenge. "What do you mean?" he asked. "Take for example Tulsi Kirtana." Gaurahari replied. "What does it mean?" Achyutananda said. "We pray to Tulsi Devi for devotion to Lord Vishnu." Gaurahari moved a little closer to his friend. "What does E Nivedana Dara Sakira Nugata Kori mean?" Achyutananda gave the translation, and as he did so he realized that the Vishnu Bhakti spoken of in Tulsi Kirtana meant the Brahma Bhakti of the gopis. He was too embarrassed to say what he thought. All these years I have mouthed words that I never took to heart. Gaurhari left it at that. He knew what a word to the wise to Achyutananda was enough. Oh, that a word. Okay, sorry. That night Achyutananda could not sleep. His talk with Gaurahari had opened a Pandora's box for him. In his mind he reviewed the devotional practices he performed every day and contemplated their meaning and purpose. How often had he chanted prayers such as Sri Gaur Ashtaka without feeling? How often had he chanted prayers, such as Gaurastika, without feeling? How often had he sung in Kirtana as a form of recreation? How often had he read pages of scripture without remembering a word? Achyutananda vowed to take his spiritual practices more seriously, to chant jappa more carefully, and to curb the enjoying spirit that made him revel in acts of devotion he did not fully understand. Achyutananda was true to his vow, at least for a few months. Then again, without his noticing it, complacency and inattention diluted his devotional practices and brought him to the edge of despondency. With encouragement from seniors, he again picked himself up and began his practices with renewed enthusiasm. In this way, years came and went, and Acyutananda accepted a variety of services such as Sankirtana leader, introductory course director, temple president, and finally the head of university preaching. But inside, he always hankered to be the devotee he wanted to be, and that others thought him a really steady devotee. Unsteady devotees, while trying to steady and upgrade their devotional practices, often take vows they cannot maintain. Niyama, niyama, niyama.
Niyamakshama.
Due to spiritual weaknesses, their efforts remain sporadic. Oh, Ghana.
Maranathala. So that means also means thick and thin. Sometimes very enthusiastic, taking specific vows, they will do this, but then other times not. So unable to uphold specific determinations or vows. So it's a stage of
This
or a stage of anishta bhakti. So it's a stage of unsteady bhakti. So he's yet to come to the stage of being nishta. So he's been around for a few years. He's not satisfied. He wants to become more fixed. He wants to attain the stage of nishta.
This resonates so much.
Yes, that's the whole point. Yeah, that's right. Perhaps there's a few devotees have their hand up. Let's share the reading out, shall we, a bit. So, Monica, Mother, you like to? Well, the hands have gone down now. There was hands anyway. Monica, you can read. You had your hand up there.
Okay. Acyutananda, now 34 years old, observed that even after 10 years of active devotional service, the desire for material enjoyment still haunted him. More specifically, he still contemplated sex. He would catch himself looking at the woman in the temple. Even when visiting with Gaurahari, now a pujari for Radha and Krishna at the farm, Acyutananda would sometimes have unbecoming thoughts about attractive Shilavati, a truly saintly devotee. For the first time since joining, Acyutananda began to seriously contemplate whether he should marry. But why am I even thinking like this, he wondered. After initiation, Acyutananda had weighed the pros and cons of marriage in light of his past experiences with women and his realizations in Krishna consciousness. He concluded that he should stay celibate and perhaps accept sannyas later in life. Why has my resolve waned? Acyutananda turned to Pushta Krishna, whose marriage of a few years had recently ended with his wife's leaving Krishna consciousness. He even telephoned his spiritual master for the first time in their relationship. Both guides advised Acyutananda to reassess his spiritual practices. Those found lacking should be fortified. Those that were sound should be made sounder. Then after some time, Acyutananda should reevaluate his situation. You may find his Guru Maharaj concluded that whether or not to marry will no longer be an issue. Acyutananda knew that the following period would be a watershed in his devotional life. He tried to control his flickering mind and withdraw it from thoughts of should I or shouldn't I, and if I should, then whom? Instead, he tried to fix his mind on his efforts to evaluate and rejuvenate his Krishna consciousness. If after some years the expected results of devotional practices, such as an increased attachment to Krishna, are not forthcoming, if instead certain material desires are found to be waxing, devotees should not doubt whether Krishna consciousness works. Rather, they should investigate their own consciousness and behavior to determine what they are doing to obstruct the fruits of devotional service from ripening. If with senior guidance their practice are found to be faultless, then they should be patient until the fruit appears in their own time.
That's where pause there. You can continue reading, but pause there in case any questions or comments. This is another aspect of unsteady devotional service. Yeah, this is all coming from, we mentioned this book more than once, Madhuri Kadambini by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. He details what unsteady spiritual practice is. And he speaks, and he gives this example, which is a common example, that, you know, where, yes, I shall renounce the world, you know, I shall stay brahmachari. Then a couple of years later or sometime later, one is thinking, oh, if I'm still not able to control my mind, I'm still thinking of sex life. Then it's said, you know, a sannyasi who falls down goes to hell. So perhaps I should be honest with myself and get married. But then if I get married, then I'll have less time to hear and chant. Just talala, you know. Also, it could be like, shall I, let me do this service, let me do that service, let me, as one Maharaj described, easy journey to other temples. Shall I go here? Shall I go there? You know, one is unable to be fixed in any specific resolve. So it doesn't necessarily mean that something's gone wrong. It may do, but it just means it's a stage that everyone will actually go through. Yeah, to become steady, you have to. It comes from being unsteady. Unless you're quite advanced from a previous life, then you're not going to look back. You're going to be quite focused. You're going to be fixed, and you're going to be focused, and there's going to be no doubts. Yeah, but often devotees will go through this. I know from my experience, those who join the temple, generally as brahmacharis, they all have to come to a specific point where they're going to decide whether they want to continue as a brahmachari or they want to enter into the grihastha ashram. Yeah. So it's up to us in the temple, especially those who are kind of looking over the devotees, is to be able to help them or to have help to identify the best path for them. But it's often a delicate issue. Most devotees, they will, although they need to get married, due to false ego, they will refuse to accept it until it's kind of the last, until it's, you know, until they're perhaps when they're too old. Well, not too old, but they should have done it earlier. So anyway, that's the whole subject, but mainly this is what Acyutananda is going through. So he's unsteady, but he wants to be steady. And he's being advised, he's did the right thing, because he has spiritual masters, so he's consulted with seniors, he's consulted with spiritual master. And that's the general advice which is generally given, that if one's going to make a change, one should make a change from a position of strength. Yeah, so one should increase one's resolve in their sadhana, and then again weigh things up. Yeah, rather than making a decision from a point of weakness, better make a decision from a point of strength. Yeah, so therefore, you know, perhaps a time of increased sadhana to really understand what is the best direction to actually go in. Yeah. All right. Unless there's any comments on that or questions, then you can continue. Hare
Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, please.
Despera. He said, I have lost the holy name's mercy. Is it because of the inattentiveness that is why he feels? Acyutananda was often inattentive. So that's why he's feeling that way. Is that correct? No, Prabhu, not up, down.
Oh, down. Okay, so you're reading forward, yeah?
Yeah, this one. I have lost the holy name's mercy. The first para in this
sentence.
Okay, yes. Yeah. Well, let's just read it, shall we? Let's just read this paragraph and we'll stop there.
Oh, sorry. Oh my God. I thought you read it. Sorry.
Monica, you can continue reading.
Shall I finish that paragraph?
Yeah.
Acyutananda seriously appraised his devotional life. In retrospect, he could see that laxity in his devotional ways and offences to the Vaishnavas and the holy names were the primary cause of his weakened state. Although he was rock steady in attending the morning program, Acyutananda was often inattentive, especially during the jappa period. Although he had a good relationships with the Vaishnavas, he was prone to point out their defects to third parties. He remembered that he had once neglected a senior devotee who was known to have had a difference of opinion with his spiritual master, and that he had sometimes resented his GBC over management issues. As a result of these transgressions, he thought, I have lost the holy name's mercy.
All right, so that's the answer to the question then. So here, Maharaj bringing up interesting point, and it's quite subtle here. It's like, well, yeah. Well, one is not subtle. He's prone to point out the defects in the so-called defects in devotees. So that is an offense. Krishna doesn't like that. Yeah. And here he had neglected a senior devotee. So this neglect may have been, that's probably may have been, well, this is a story about neglect. So he didn't give him personal attention. He kind of had a grudge against this Vaishnava. Why? Because there were some differences in opinion on some subject with his guru. So one giving a bad eye or bad attitude to the Vaishnava. Yeah. So offense. So these things are maybe what are big in one sense, but there may be small incidents that happen. And if you're in a mindset, it creates a certain mindset that you're in, and it begins to accumulate. The result is that the mercy of the holy name, or you can lose the shelter of the holy name. And this is what he is concluding. Yeah. So again, but he is a sincere and faithful devotee. So it's not going to take him away from devotion. He's going to make amends. He is assessing himself. He's assessing his or her attitude and wants to make amends. It's going to try and change.
He's realized that, though, which is good, that he's actually realized that what he's done is that's the reason that he's lost the holy name's mercy. So,
So he's coming to terms with this, Yeah. All right. Chandravalimov, you like to read? Thus, over the years.
I'm reading from the book, so you'll have to tell me when I come to.
Yeah, I can read the part, the notes at the end, because in the book it's
in the book. I've got it in the book at the bottom.
Okay, you can read it then, no problem.
Thus, over the years, the spiritual strength he has enjoyed as a new devotee has waned to a shadow of his original might. Where was the innocence, the simplicity, the bliss he had tasted before becoming a senior devotee, an advanced devotee, an authority to be respected? For the first time since he had become a devotee, Acyutananda's determination to face the challenges ahead of him. He took 2 weeks leave from the temple and went to a farm to chant, read, pray to the deities of Radha and Krishna, and to be with Gaurahari. This brief respite, especially the long talk with his friend that strengthened into the late hours of the night, gave him a new lease on life. Okay, now the bottom. Okay. Offences, aparad to the holy name and to Vaishnavas may stunt and even uproot devotees' devotional creeper. Even with well-intentioned, and serious devotees like Acyutananda may inadvertently commit offenses. At such times, the offenses should be identified and rectified, lest they cause devotees to fall from the path of bhakti. In his usual good-natured way, Gaurahari stressed that Acyutananda must immediately rectify his offenses to Vaishnavas, great and small, and beg their forgiveness. He then suggested that in addition to his strict external practices, Acyutananda be more attentive to his inner spiritual development.
Just a note on that, and you can continue. I won't mention any names, but one time I went to a holy dham. I went to Mayapur with a Prabhupada disciple, so senior devotee, and his mission on going to Mayapur was to seek forgiveness from his different god brothers who he had had exchanges with, which in the past, which could have been termed, in his opinion and in their opinion, as offences. And so my service was to go and meet these other Prabhupada disciples, seen it, and invite them to come and see this Prabhupada disciple. So he did it many, well, I can't forget, well, it wasn't like hundreds, but there was a few. So he did that very seriously. He had a list of all, he did a, what's the word? He did a retrospect. He did a, wrote down names. He did it, took it quite seriously. And then he invited them for prasadam. And I would go and bring them to the room and like that. And he would, I wouldn't stay around at that time. They wanted to be in private together. But I remember it was that's what he did. Yeah. So sometimes we might want to do that. Of course, depends individually. Better to ask for forgiveness on the way rather than let it go and let it build up. But it's something, I've had to do that more on a few occasions. I've had to go to junior devotees as well and beg for forgiveness of offences. We should not, we should do that. I'm going to be so proud to think that we don't need to do that. Yeah. Some of you might not need to do that, but if you think you may have upset someone or offended someone, this is the process, is to go and ask for forgiveness. And it's almost magical that as soon as you do that, it's like the difference between night and day. The whole weight goes off your shoulders, and as if Krishna is immediately pleased with that. Then it's a different experience from the next day. You're chanting like that. It's a science. So, any questions on that?
I was thinking, what I've heard is, Mother Vilasini, who was...
Yeah, she did that.
Yeah, she did that.
Yeah, she did that at the end of her life.
Yeah.
She was a wonderful devotee, but she was also very, very strict in the Vajrayana, very, very strict and very, very straightforward and cutting with devotees. And she even put her cancer down to that.
Yeah.
She actually put the cancer she had down to of her offending Vaishnavas. Whether that was the case, I don't know. But that's how she saw it. And she was seriously begging for forgiveness. Prabhupada did as well. Srila Prabhupada did at the end of his life.
Yes, he did the same. God brothers and gods.
Of course, he did say some quite strong things. He did say, but they didn't. But they said at the time, where they said they didn't consider it an offense, but Prabhupada asked for forgiveness. So definitely at that stage. Yeah, sorry, Suniti Priya, Mother, I cut you off.
No, don't worry. I was just saying that, how do we know that we have offended? Sometimes we don't really realize, we don't do deliberately.
Yeah, so
if we go to the deities and say, I'm sorry if I have offended, which you're sometimes not realizing it.
Yeah, that's another thing. There will be ways you speak about someone or speak to someone which you will very clearly know it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It'll be very clear to you that was wrong. I shouldn't have acted like that. But other times it may be unintentional. So therefore, the reaction will still be there, but it will not be so severe because the intent, it wasn't done with a bad intent. It was accidental. So therefore, that's why in the morning, at least in the temple, we always pay respect to all the Vaishnavas. Pantakalva through Vishta Kripasinda Viyavata Pradinam Dharmi Pyo Vaishnava Pyo Namo Namaha. Yeah. Sometimes what devotees will do as well, they will in public, they will say, "Dear devotees, I may have offended some of you in the past. You please now forgive me." Sometimes they may do that. Or sometimes you may offend someone or upset a Vaishnava, and then that Vaishnava leaves the world. So what do you do then? Well, then you take shelter holy name. You have no other recourse. And then eventually you'll get the mercy again if you take complete, constant chanting of the holy name. Yeah. Perhaps it'd take too long to. We know that story. Is it Sanatana Goswami or Rupa Goswami where he was in? I just tell the story quickly. Someone can tell me if I got the wrong Goswami. I think it's Rupa Goswami. He was in meditation on Krishna Lila. He was in samadhi, chanting his rounds, meditating upon Radha Krishna pastime, where Krishna puts the branch down, Radharani grabs the flower, he's in the tree, he lets the branch go, and Radharani gets carried in the air with her feet off the ground. Mm-hmm. So Rupa Goswami is smiling at the pastime with his eyes closed in samadhi. And then at the same time, this devotee walks past who has a deformity and he can't walk properly. So he walks past and Rupa Goswami is smiling. So he thinks, this devotee who's disabled, thinks Rupa Goswami is laughing at my disability. Mm-hmm. So he walked on, and that absorption went completely, disappeared. And Rupa Goswami couldn't get back into that absorption. And he concluded, I must have made an offense. So then he went to Sanatana Goswami. There's different versions of this story. And then Sanatana Goswami said, yes, you must have made an offense. But whoever made an offense too? He said, well, you should arrange a big feast and invite all the Vaishnavas. And the person who doesn't come, that is the person you offended. Yeah. Very intelligent. And then you should go and beg for forgiveness. So there's one story there. But so unfortunately, that unavoidable, we may make offenses. So therefore, it's good to always be very charitable to devotees, and to beg. We can beg for forgiveness in general, like that, or take shelter holy name. Anyone else has any insights about that?
I was thinking about the story about Chitraketu and Lord Shiva and Parvati.
Parvati, yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, go on, expand on that.
Unintentionally, because Parvati was sitting on Lord Shiva while he was preaching, and then Chitraketu goes and he just smiles, and he wasn't even thinking, he was probably thinking really
Yeah, so.
Yeah, so what if you make offenses like that? You don't intentionally do it. It just, your thoughts are running and you're thinking something different, and the other person takes it in a different light, and then
So what can we do but take shelter of the process of devotional service? I mean, unfortunately, that may well happen, even without your knowledge of who or how or why. Yeah. So therefore, we have no other recourse to take shelter of the holy name and the practice of devotional service if we're not aware of where or how the offense was made. What can we do? We have no other shelter but the process of devotional service, Unless we do what Sanatana Goswami did and invite every Vaishnava in the United Kingdom to and whatever one doesn't come. But at least let's try and avoid consciously offending Vaishnavas. That much we can do. Let's try like speaking badly about them to third parties or criticizing or having like that. Let's be very careful. Yeah.
Oh, I've got a little something to ask actually.
Yes.
When you're doing service and you're focusing to be in time, when the curtains open, everything should be like, baka, right?
Yeah.
So then you kind of running around, putting water cups, this, that, everything, vases, floors, this and that. And then you're working with some devotees that they probably feel you are like overtaking too much or overseeing too much. Then how do you deal? You kind of understand that I should try not, but you doing it because the service must finish by 7 o'clock.
That's okay. Fine. As long as we're polite about it and we're polite and we're not being harsh to devotees.
Mm-hmm. And you're also thinking
about you have to,
consciousness as well.
Yeah, just make sure you're not being short or you're not putting devotees into difficulty.
Mm-hmm.
That you're not causing them undue stress.
Yeah.
Sometimes we may have to rush kind of rush a devotee or encourage them to go faster, but we do it nicely. We don't hit them over the head with the Achman cup.
Chandravani, don't do that, please.
Yeah.
Oh, Krishna.
Yeah.
Okay. So as long as you I am conscious of it, and I try not to be difficult or whatever, but my conscious is like.
But then you can always afterwards, after the mad, crazed
2 minutes.
Crazed last minute before the curtains open on the Janmashtami, where all the pujaris are going berserk behind the curtain, and the fingers getting, might be some pushing devotees out the way, but not in a bad way, just to get through. And afterwards, oh, dear devotees, please forgive me for any offences I made then,
Even then, when I open the curtain, I always get told, lights.
I wonder who says that, like.
Everything, I keep forgetting.
Yeah, someone other, I'm clued in on that. It's the first thing, I don't take darshan of the deities. I just take darshan to see if the lights are on.
I was telling you need to do a label there for me. I just forget.
Yeah. Murli Prabhu, I think once a week or something, like what we should really all do is we just ask for forgiveness to all the Vaishnavas like that. We should make something like that we all.
Yeah, you can do that.
Or something like once a week, all of us get together and just, as you say, in the morning you do. When we've done our service, we don't really know if we had made any offenses, Yeah,
I mean, you can do that once every now and again. You can, all devotees you interact with, you can. I mean, sometimes you can go over the top with that. Sometimes I've seen devotees, it's been a bit over the top. Every time please forgive me for. There was one, I think I said before, there's one devotee who, every time he would see me in the temple, he would say sorry. Every time he passed me on the stairs, sorry. Every time, sorry, Prabhu. Every time, I don't know why. But we shouldn't go over the top like every day, every person. Please forgive me my offenses. I mean, in one sense, over the top, could say perhaps that's good, but it shouldn't be. It might be a little bit. That itself might start to become annoying to the Vaishnavas.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
In one sense, so it's a good point you're bringing up. If we've been associating with devotees in a temple for a few years, and we might be going through what Acyutananda is going through. So just to make sure, please, if there's any offences I've made. I mean, I think we're familiar with this. Often devotees have this type of exchange. Please forgive any offences I may have made, Prabhu. Yes.
Prabhu, I just thought I remembered something. I think Bhakta Bhavana Prabhu was speaking on this. He said, when you're chanting, there is no question of if I made or something. That if does not come. When you're really seriously chanting, it will be revealed, yes, what mistakes you have done.
Yep.
you will understand that. So there is no question of just being making a general statement saying if I have done. You
Oh,
can,
that's what I said in the beginning. Like, if you're sincere, you will know.
yeah,
It will tell you in the heart
yeah,
what you have done wrong.
yeah. So don't make general statement. And he did mention, he said, oh, we don't know, please forgive my offenses, please forgive everybody. No, don't make it just like a drama in front.
Okay,
That,
yeah, so there you go. Yeah, perhaps, yeah. Yeah, so, but
so,
if you're, yeah, it shouldn't be like a regular daily thing. Don't
yeah,
make a drama of it. Yeah, it's a good point. But if you feel you've made offenses, there's no harm in occasionally asking devotees, if
yeah.
I've made any offenses,
You
please.
can speak nicely. You can just have a talk, basically, and then you can lighten the hearts.
Yeah. Right. So perhaps we're edge on, shall we? Okay, so who was reading, or was someone reading and I wasn't reading for long and I stopped them? Was it Chandravali? You want to continue reading?
I was reading, but you can read for a change.
Okay, so we're on this part here. In his usual good-natured way, Gaudahari stressed that the Acyutananda must immediately rectify his offences to Vaishnavas. So here we go, explaining what was said, great and small, and beg their forgiveness. He then suggested that in addition to his strict external practices, Acyutananda be more attentive to his inner spiritual development. Gaudahari, what is the goal of your practices? Acyutananda, love of God. Gaudahari, and what kind of love of God will you develop? For which form of Godhead? Acyutananda, like that of the Rajvasis for Krishna in Vrindavan. Gaudahari, are you doing that? Acyutananda was about to reply yes, but caught himself. He realized, that he had been so absorbed in preaching, in setting a good example, in regularly reading Prabhupada's books, that he had neglected the very purpose of these activities, developing the mood of attachment to Krishna. In the silence that followed, Gaudahari revealed a side of himself previously unknown to Acyutananda. In Shilavati's presence, Gaurahari spoke of their past difficulties in controlling their mutual physical attraction and how, on occasion, they had succumbed to it. But by developing attachment to the deities, husband and wife had brought that attraction under control. By cultivating attachment to the deities, they had actually neutralized their sex desire. In an atypical, sober way, Gaurahari predicted that the emerging attachment to Krishna that had already filled their hearts would not only eradicate their material attachments and become the source of all auspiciousness, but it would also awaken their ecstatic devotion. That ecstatic devotion would be the seed from which love of Krishna would sprout. Gaurahari suggested that Acyutananda practice devotional service with a new meditation, how to develop ecstatic devotion to Radha and Krishna. He cited a letter in which Srila Prabhupada had encouraged a devotee to make his every act a conscious offering of love to the Lord. Gaudahari concluded, in this way, you will experience ever-increasing bliss and your desire for marriage will vanish. Then there's a quote here explaining, the two results of devotional service in practice are the destruction of material miseries, kleshagni, and the appearance of all auspiciousness, subhada. Rupa Goswami defines sadhana bhakti as the practice by which devotees aspire to achieve ecstatic devotion, bhava bhakti. To be unaware or forget the purpose of sadhana, as Acyutananda had done, is akin to driving a car with no idea of where one is going. Such mechanical devotional service is called niyamagraha. So just as a note, Sudha Bhakti Chintamani, when was it written? Someone has the book there, can go to the front and see when it was written. 2001.
7.
Yeah, 2007. So Shivaram Swami Maharaj has elaborated, because this is a common theme from Shivaram Swami, as we're reading in Sankapa Kaumudi as well. Now, he's elaborated on this part. This is what Sankapa Kaumudi is about. And he's expanded, because he concluded that he hadn't expanded on this point enough in a Sudha Bhakti Chintamani. So that's why Maharaj is describing the specifics of the sadhana by which you achieve Baba. So he's this like one sentence has become a whole book. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's become a whole book. Yeah. Here it's just given. Maharaj wasn't. He said there's things he didn't write in Sudha Bhakti Chintamani which he wanted to elaborate on, and that's the result of that is Sankapa Kaumudi. Anyway, any other reflections on this? Or?
Yeah, I was thinking of how Narad Muni tells Goswami about why he was, how he was despondent about what he'd written. And then he writes the whole Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah. Can you just relate it to that? I'll just so
like, you was talking about Shivaram Maharaj with one sentence.
Oh, okay. Wasn't satisfied. Yeah.
Yeah, and then same Vyasdev had written, but he wasn't satisfied. And then when Narad Muni told him, then he wrote the whole Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah,
and we're just reading that. That's where we are in our daily Bhagavatam classes.
Yes.
Very exciting part of Bhagavatam. So a few minutes left, we can read a bit more. But so this is really good because it's very rare you're going to get a devotee who's not going to have any of these problems. It just doesn't. Generally, it's not going to happen unless some really exceptional, very advanced souls. But generally, we're all going to experience these different, these different issues or these different tests or these different struggles to, for instance, to avoid offences or to lose our sight of the goal, and we start, and our devotion service starts becoming quite mechanical. So spiritual life is a constant one of appraising where we are and making adjustments. It's like constant. We have to constantly be assessing our mentality and weighing it up to what is the required mentality and to making adjustments. We have to get used to being, we have to be quite vigorous in that and trying to identify anarthas or try to identify where we're going wrong and then adjust. Spiritual life is not like, it doesn't necessarily go like that. It kind of go up and can stay at this stage, then go back down a bit, You can see my fingers, it can go up like this. Then you procrastinate here and you don't grab the next stage, so therefore you go down. Or you may, then you go up, then you go like this, It's one of constant reassessment. But over and above that, if we're sincere, Krishna is seeing our efforts and he's going to help us. Yeah. Te samsatata yuktanam pajati bhupurvakam tadami buddhivakam tam yena manda bhajantite. Those who are constantly devoted to serve me with like constant. Constant means constant. Yeah. Constant, they're constantly devoted to me. They carry, then Krishna will give us the intelligence by which we can get to love and get through all these stages. Right, let's we've got 5 minutes left. Perhaps someone else could read. Let's just see what's happening. Let's see where we're going to leave Acyutananda this week. Anyone like to read the last 5 minutes?
Guruji, can I read?
Yes, you can.
Okay.
And it's from in the years that followed, Acyutananda concentrated more on becoming a Vaishnava than on looking like one. He removed from his heart the inclination to equate seniority by years of position in the institution with spiritual achievement. As he approached his 40th year, he was attentive to chant the holy name with feeling that he called out to Krishna for mercy. He read from Srila Prabhupada's book and listened to Vaishnavas more with a view to developing pure devotion than acquiring philosophical knowledge. In his dealings with devotees and non-devotees alike, he always tried to follow the instruction in the third verse of Sri Sixtatthakama.
Okay, so this quick, sorry, I jump in here. So this is a clue, not a clue. It's kind of quite straightforward. How to avoid offences to Vaishnavas. Okay. You can carry on, Mother. Sorry.
So
With time.
with time, the attraction in his heart for female companionship subside, and as he predicted by his well-wishers, Acyutananda's desire for marriage disappeared. As it did, he gained self-confidence and strong faith in the process of devotional service. He had spoken with Govinda Maharaj on his last visit, and the aging sannyasi had the smile with pleasure and said, "You passed the test. I'm very proud of you." Acyutananda had learned many lessons from the experience. The first was to keep his mind and senses under full control by his purified intelligence. And the second was never to lose sight of the purpose of his devotional practice and services. As a result of this resolute offenceless devotion, the truths of devotional service, like many parts of jigsaw puzzle, gradually began to fall into place. The philosophy Krishna
Of Krishna.
consciousness, is that all right? The philosophy of Krishna consciousness was no longer the jumble of disconnected thoughts. Acyutananda had grappled with the past. It was a
Synergistic.
whole that gave him a piercing insight in the principle of devotional service and the world preaching of the institution. Controversies such as the Ritwik issue, ISKCON relation with the Gaudiya Matha, and the relevance of the GBC controversies he had in the past addressed with passionate and heroic. He now saw his this passionate wisdom. In this way, after gaining mastery over his senses, Acyutananda brought his power of speech under control, and taking shelter of the mode of goodness, he finally bridled his mind and became fixed in pure devotional service. Haridasa, the temple president at the farm.
Let's read this. These are some of the symptoms of steadiness, nishta, which appear with determined practice. Acyutananda, like many devotees, came face to face with the insufficiency and the precarious nature of unsteady devotional service, anishta bhajan kriya. With the help of strong association and purposeful practice, he was able to consolidate his spiritual assets and reach a happy stage of steady devotion. So, you know, it's what's being said here, like it may not be immediately recognizable as unsteady devotion, but here it is. Here's like, say, Acyutananda. He was obviously embroiled in arguments about, for instance, the Ritwik issue. So these type of conversations are never very sattvic. You know, it's quite passionate. So he is another one, ISKCON's relationship with the Gaudiya Math. There's different opinions which are quite diverse, which are quite diverse, and sometimes devotees may be like a conductor, or like as Maharaj describes, a lightning conductor for getting involved in controversy. You know, another one is the fall of the jiva. He didn't put it. That's another one which often devotees can, their discussions can really border on the line of offences or lacking, or can create disrespectful dealings amongst Vaishnavas. You know, so that Maharaj is bringing up here as a symptom of anishta bhakti. But someone who's more steady, then as Maharaj, you see what he says here. How did he describe here? Where is it? Person missed it here. anyway, I can't find it again here, but he didn't get himself involved in those things anymore. He was more wise. He became more wise. He had more wisdom, or he or she could say, ladies, it applies to everyone. Didn't see the benefit of wasting time with such wrangling. So one is more concerned about the state of one's consciousness than getting involved in these type of things, you know. So India, I thought is interesting, another like a state of steadiness of how one conducts oneself, being exposed to what can sometimes be diverse views of opinion. Like what's diverse view, like even devotees, you know, this COVID thing and the vaccine or no vaccine. There's some devotees who really, I mean, I'm more on the side of not having the vaccine, but I kind of, there's devotees who are really going to war with this, you know, really getting into it. They got their own websites and they're more or less blaspheming devotees who are speaking for the vaccine and those who, you understand? And it attracts a certain type of devotee, it may do. But this is that type of thing you want to try to avoid, because inevitably you're going to end up making an offense. I can remember my spiritual Shivaram Swami Maharaj mentioned one time about engaging in conversation with followers of Narayan Maharaj, you know, and he chose not to, because he said it will only lead to offenses. And he couldn't see any good that would actually come from it. I forget the actual exact context, but I know it was a discussion on that type of subject where it can be quite diversive, especially a few years ago when Narayan Maharaj was still with us. There was quite some quite heavy accusations being thrown back and forward. And Maharaj chose, I remember he chose, it was best not to speak, because inevitably we may make offenses. Anyway, I've gone over time, 7:03, Hare Krishna. All right, so we'll stop there. And just to let you know that Acyutananda, or I think he's Pusta Krishna and his friends, their spiritual life doesn't go smoothly yet. There's a few deviations coming, so get ready for the excitement.
Oh dear. I thought you'll probably go back to Godhead now.
No, not yet. There's a few distractions that are going to happen.
Yeah,
okay.
I can imagine.
We'll hear about that next week, okay? So,
Struggle.
thank you everyone for joining us, and look forward to tomorrow's hearing and chanting.
Thank you, Muli Prabhu.
Thank you.
Praise Muli Prabhu ki jai.